So next up is the president of Docuworld, Thomas Schneck.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thomas Schneck. Together with Jürgen Wiffer, president of Docuworld, and also I'm very pleased to have all you guys here back together for Docuworld. The theme of this Docuworld is value and vision, as Steve already talked about. But before we go really into more details, what this really means for us and how we really want to talk about these aspects in more detail throughout the next couple of days, I want to just review last year. Last year was a tremendous year for Docuworld. We were able, together with you, to increase our revenues by over 25%, which is an amazing achievement. If we take all the revenue we generate through the software, the professional services, the hardware which you typically sell, our project revenues were actually about $160 million, which is an amazing achievement as well. We're able to win over 1,200 new customers, exactly 1,269. And what was really amazing is that 15% of our new customers were already cloud customers. And actually, the first quarter of 2016, that number actually jumped already to 30%. So we're on a very, very good track here. So when we look at our cloud customers, by the end of 2015, we had 240 customers being online. They had 8,741 users, and they managed about 5 million documents. So overall, very, very, very good results. Yeah, it's always interesting, obviously, at the end of a year to look at the state, how does the revenue really come together? And at this point, about 50% of our revenue comes from maintenance and support, so those are the recurring revenues of the support contracts. 36% comes from licenses, and 15% comes from extension sales. Yeah, and I also want to look at this geographically, and it's kind of an even split. A little bit more on the Americas side, it's 55% coming from the Americas and 45% from EMEA. Now, if we take all these numbers together, and Steve already mentioned that, that makes us the worldwide leader when it comes to selling ECM solutions to the mid-sized companies. There's no vendor out there in the world who sells more systems, more professional systems to the mid-sized market than we do here as a Docuworld community. And I think you have to congratulate yourself. This is a wonderful achievement that we are at this position. Thank you very, very much. It's amazing that we're able to do that. I also want to give you kind of a more background how our international footprint looks like. As you know, we sell and make Docuworld available in a lot of different languages. You see here the overview is in 16 in total. We also have a very international footprint from our partner base. This is our partner network here in Europe. So you can see Germany still being our dominant market from a revenue standpoint, but also from a partner standpoint, with about 140 partners, followed by Spain, UK, France, Eastern Europe, Benelux, Italy, and Scandinavia. And then if you look at the Americas, this is our setup here, United States with 177 partners, 20 coming from what we call the Caribbean market, 14 from Mexico, 7 Canada, Brazil, 11 other South American markets, 7, 3 out of Colombia, and 2 out of Argentina. Again, a very, very international footprint. We're very proud of having all these countries here also represented here at Docuworld. Yeah, and also, just to wrap it up, I want to just give you a couple of logos which we were able together to add in 2015, new companies who made a decision for Docuworld. Obviously, it's just a very small segment of those over 1,200 customers which we were able to add last year. So again, I can just thank you for making these numbers and these wins here possible. It's a wonderful achievement. Yeah, so I think if you look back the last couple of years, we all had a very, very good run with Docuworld. So the question is then always, what will the future bring? Will this continue like that? And I think I can already say up front, we absolutely believe that this bright future will absolutely continue in that way. And the main reason for that is that we are in the midst of a major trend, which is the digital transformation of economies. I'm sure you all have heard and read about that, what's going on. The companies are really now heavily investing and digitizing their business, and by doing that dramatically really changing how they work with their employees, how they work with their customers, how they work with their vendors. Now, if you look at digital transformation, there are typically always two different dimensions. One is the digitization of business processes, and the other one is the digitization of complete business model. So if you think of companies like Airbnb, Uber, they really digitize the complete business model, and by doing that, disrupting totally those businesses, basically. So in the transportation industry with Uber, and the hospitality industry with Airbnb. Now, the good news for all of us here in the room is that ECM plays a very important role in digital transformation. I think it's very easy to understand it with business processes. If we digitize a business process, let's say the onboarding of an employee, the invoice approval process, you can very easily see that we play with ECM a very, very important role. We are at the center of those projects. But also we see currently that complete industries are getting digitized, and even in those transformations there, ECM plays an important role. And what industries those are, which vertical markets those are, Jürgen Wiffel will talk in his presentation more, so you can see that, how ECM plays a role there. So the question is obviously, why does ECM play such an important role in a digital transformation? And I think in order to answer this question, we have to look at the reasons. Why is a company even in the first place going through a digital transformation? What's really driving that? There was a very interesting study done last year by McKinsey. They asked over 1,100 C-level people and said, why are you doing this? What kind of effects, what kind of expectations do you have when it comes to digital transformation? And those were the results. Number one, increase in top-line revenue. Number two, increase in profit margin. Number three, return of invested capital. Number four, this is interesting, they expected to spend capital, so their new required capital needs to increase. They wanted to increase average sales price, and they wanted to decrease, this is the long green bar at the end, they wanted to decrease operational costs. Let's just review that. So, more revenue, higher profit margins, return of investment, lowering operating costs. Does that sound familiar when we talk to a prospect about ECM? I would say maybe. Maybe because I think many times when we talk to a prospect about ECM, we hear, I would say, more operational, more tactical goals which they have. There was actually also a very interesting study done by Bitkom, which is the German IT Trade Association. And something similar was actually done by AIM here in the US, and similar results, where people who were right at the edge of buying an ECM solution were asked, why are you doing this? What are you trying to get out of this solution? And these were the answers. Quick access to information, security of data, reduce expenses and cost of document handling, location-independent information availability, compliance with laws and regulation, better information, automate processes, higher data integration. You see the whole list. So again, I would say very operational, very tactical goals. However, if you take just any of those and think them through, what they really mean for the organization, you very quickly end up with those strategic goals which we saw before on that McKinsey slide. Let's just take an example. First and most important goal is quick access for information. Why does a company want that? Now, here, most of us here in the sales area, right? We're working for sales. Let's just use this for us. What does it mean to have quick access for a salesperson to information? You spend less time trying to find a price list, less time to find customer information, less time, any kind of customer correspondence. And what are we doing with that extra time we're just winning? We're talking more to our customers, we're talking more to our prospects, we're writing more proposals, we write better proposals, better quality of proposals. What does this all mean? Higher sales. The number one reason we just saw before on that McKinsey slide, what a company really wants. And that kind of connection, between those ECM aspects and goals to the strategic goals on the McKinsey slide, that is very easy to do for all these aspects. And that's, I think, why it's so clear that ECM and digital transformation goes hand in hand. So that's just something we have to be very much aware what kind of an important role we really play here. Now, given the heavy investment into digital transformation and the important role ECM plays, I think it's very safe to say that there will be a high demand for ECM moving forward. I think there's a lot of headwind for us moving forward. Now, because the market is so attractive, there will be also all kinds of different players. I think that's always something we see, obviously. If there's an attractive market out there, a lot of different companies get involved. And I think we also will see this in the ECM space. You're going to see the pure play ECM vendors obviously being active, maybe some new entries. We're going to see, let's say a CRM vendor or an ERP vendor saying, we have also some sort of a document management component. You're going to see the file share and sync vendors like a Dropbox or Box saying, we also are in the ECM space. You're going to see the operating system providers, like the Microsofts, obviously, like the Google saying, we also have some sort of a way basically to store and find a document. So all kinds of different vendors in this space. And again, I think it's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. It actually just shows how attractive the market is. The question for us is obviously, as Docuworld community, how do we operate in this market? What do we focus on to really make sure that we get the lion's share of this market moving forward? And I think the answer to this question is quite simple. We focus exactly on those aspects which are the most important for a digital transformation, what we just saw on that slide. Higher sales, higher margin, larger ASP, lowering operating costs. And just to say it in one word, value. So we want to be the one who are not just showing a company how it's done, how we digitize a business process, how we digitize a complete business model. We also want to be the one who shows the best how it's ultimately paying off for the customer, for the company. And that's why this value topic is so important for us. And that's why we put this at the center of this Docuworld. And that we really understand that this should be our leading aspect when talking to a customer, really showing them what we can do to really accomplish their goals when it comes to digital transformation. Now, I think this approach, this value-based selling, has two big advantages. One, it's a competitive advantage. I think a lot of our traditional ECM vendors, they're still very much focused on functions and features. So we really set ourselves apart here. And a lot of other software vendors, which say, they have some sort of an ECM component, that ECM component typically is pretty narrow. They cannot really digitize in that broad way like we, a complete department, a complete business. And therefore, they're really falling behind when we look at the value we can provide compared to the value they can provide. So that's number one. The other big advantage is that it really makes sure that we really show companies now what kind of contribution we really bring to the table when it comes to fulfilling the goals of a digital transformation. And this really addresses a problem I think we all have seen, a challenge we all have seen in our industry in the last couple of years when it comes to ECM. Now we show ECM, we show Docuware, everybody's very excited, but then they're saying, well, there's some other projects I still have to get to. But once that is done, I can get to ECM or to Docuware. Now, if we do a real good job and show the contribution we are making to the goals of a digital transformation, and many times this is actually the biggest contribution which we are making from the ECM standpoint, then we also make sure that we are at the very top of each priority list. So that helps us in that aspect very much as well. So value-based selling, obviously for us here in this room, is nothing new. We have been doing this for many, many years. We've been talking about this for many years, and you guys do this every day. But we want to really take this now to the next level. We really feel this is even more important today than it was maybe in the previous years. And for that reason, we have put together a whole portfolio of different initiatives and new tools we're going to talk about today during Docuworld and which we will release to you in the next couple of weeks. One new tool is a new ROI calculator. Many of you are familiar with our existing ROI calculator. It has been a very, very successful tool. We just expanded it, made it more flexible. And I just want to show you a couple of screenshots so you get a feel for what that looks like. Now let's just stay with that example from before where we talked, okay, how does ECM really help a sales department? So in this screenshot now I have basically highlighted two different benefit segments. One is increased pipeline, and the second one is increased win rate, so higher closing rate. So those are the two things we want to now measure really. What does this mean for an organization, so you can see how this ROI calculator works. So let's go to the next slide here. Now you can see here what that looks like to enter actually the relevant information from the customer. So the first aspect we want to measure is basically increasing the pipeline. So we are basically saying with all this extra time we have available because of ECM, we're going to spend this time creating more proposals. So first of all, we enter the baseline, so the current status, where we say, okay, currently we're sending out 480 proposals every year. That's what our sales department can do. But because of ECM now, we can increase that. And this is now new with this ROI calculator. It's kind of a bandwidth. You can go from conservative to optimistic. So in this case, we're saying, okay, let's say we can increase that between 5 to 10%. And the likely is kind of the medium value here. We say, let's do that here with 8%. So if I increase that now by 8%, that means I'm going to have 38 more proposals I can generate. And with a given win rate of 35%, that means that I'm going to have 13 more proposals sent out and won. And then I basically have an average revenue per deal, which is, let's say, 20,000. So that means I'm going to contribute 250,000 round numbers additional revenue to the top line. And then if I have a certain margin on each deal, let's say of 15%, that means that I have, in round numbers, about 40,000 in extra profit. So that's the quantity aspect. And then we also have a quality aspect where I say, because of ECM, because I can spend more time on these proposals, I can really work closer with other departments, I can really increase the quality of those proposals. So ultimately, I'm going to increase my win rate. And if I apply that here with the same numbers, I say I increase that from currently, let's say 35, let's say by 8% to 43%, which would be kind of a likely jump. That means I'm going to have another 38 additional deals with a deal size of 20,000. And then that actually gets another 760,000 additional revenue with a 15% margin, gets me to about 115,000 additional profitability. So these are just two examples where in a dialogue with the prospect, I can figure out what does this really mean for a company to implement ECM. Yeah, at the very end then, what happens, I just basically take all this data I have created together with the prospect, and I'm going to compare this now to the cost, to the investment which I have to make into Docuware. So in this case now, here I'm saying, okay, I'm going to buy Docuware for 50,000. I'm going to have maintenance of about 10,000 per year. I'm going to have hardware costs. I'm going to have professional services. So I have about an investment of 190,000 over the next 5 years. But I'm going to have a benefit of about 745,000 over the next couple of 5 years. So this gives me then basically a net present value discounted at 10% of about 380,000, which also represents then actually a return of investment of 293%, which is very healthy, and a return of investment after 17 months, which is typically very, very attractive. So this is just a small example, basically how this ROI calculator works. You will actually get a copy of this in the next couple of weeks, and you can start using that and really make sure that you provide this kind of evidence back to your customers. What else can we do to support you in value-based selling? So when value-based selling is very effective is obviously when you can show a prospect how other companies in the same industry are already benefiting from ECM, how other companies basically already on this way through the digital transformation and how it pays off for them. And for that purpose, we just finished a very thorough study of our existing customers to really understand where did we have success. And I just want to show you now the key findings of that analysis. So first of all, we looked at company sizes. So you can see it's pretty much across the board. So we have about 5,500 customers who are in that 1 to 49 employee segment. We have 50 to 500 who are, we have 4,200 which are in that 50 to 500 employee segment. And we have almost 1,500 companies which have more than 500 employees. So it's really across the board. Now what's even more interesting and even more telling is in which industries are these companies. And this is kind of the overview here. So the biggest bucket is services. And this is really a big bucket. There are a couple of very important industries part of that. So health services, educational services, CPAs. So it's all basically in that bucket. And we'll provide you with more detailed information around that. Number 2 is manufacturing. Number 3 is finance and insurance. Then we have wholesale trade. Then we have the whole transportation area. Then we have public administration, retail, construction, mining. So this is kind of the spread over all these different industries. Now, for us, it's not only important that we know in which industries our customers are, but also to understand what are they really doing with the product. What are the main use cases, and to see if there's a certain correlation between the use case and actually the industry. Because that's information we want to provide you more and more now in the future. So if you talk, for example, to a manufacturing company, that you can say, hey, we have seen that this is, for example, very important in quality management. We have done a lot of good solutions for quality management. Or if you talk to a transportation company, that you can say, Docker is an ideal solution for proof of delivery. Or if you talk to a hospital, you say, well, we have done a lot of work with patient onboarding. So we want to go beyond what our traditional, I would say, more horizontal approach is with finance and give you additional information, what are certain industries doing with Docuworld, so you can use that as a talk track with your prospects. And we feel that kind of approach is not just important for you as the ECM experts, but also for your sales teams. And many of you work with very large sales teams. And obviously those sales teams or sales colleagues are not just focused on Docuworld. They do many other things. They sell products, hardware products, other services. But they're obviously very, very important for us as lead providers. And we have heard about before, how important digital transformation is, an important role ECM plays in the digital transformation. But we obviously need people to talk about this and get the message across to companies around the world. And your sales teams are perfect ambassadors for that message because they have a lot of existing contacts, they have deep contacts. But again, they are not ECM experts. So we have to keep it simple for them, not too technical, and giving them talk tracks which are still relevant but easy to understand in the context of an industry, we believe is a very good way of doing that. In general, what we want to do is really mobilize and engage much more your sales teams. We really feel this is the right time to do this, just giving that huge market opportunity ahead of us. And for that reason, we have prepared also a series of new initiatives to really engage now your sales teams that they say, yeah, this is the right time now to really get involved. Last week, we sent out a newsletter called the Docuworld Sales Advisor. Some of you might have seen that. It's not really geared to you guys, the ECM experts. I mean, you should read it as well and could read it. But it's really geared to your sales teams. And it's in a very easy to understand message that they really develop an appetite and say, yeah, I want to get engaged. So we always profile, for example, an interesting project which was closed, how much money the sales rep made. We profile always a cool tool from Docuworld which they can use. The last issue was, for example, our YouTube channel. We're also going to promote always one webinar per quarter. In May, we're going to have our first webinar, how to sell to car dealerships. The whole idea is that your sales rep just watch that for half an hour and say, okay, I get it. Next time I go into a car dealership, I can start a conversation and I feel comfortable doing that. So that's the thing we're going to promote very, very heavily. And ultimately, the goal is that they bring you many, many more leads and really a part of the sales effort. So And what that looks like exactly, Steve Bain will talk about this in the sales and marketing session. We even have on top of that a campaign prepared which will allow your sales reps even to show ECM live, which is kind of a first. We're doing this, we're very excited. We already got a lot of good feedback in Europe when we launched this 2 weeks ago. We're going to show this to you guys here as well. And we really feel this is a game changer if we can really make your sales reps starting ECM and really have them enabled and empowered and going out there and really starting conversations. So this is on the whole value selling side of it. Now, obviously, as important as value selling is obviously a product which ultimately allows us then to fulfill those expectations which we are defining in the sales process with a customer. And that brings me to the second portion of our Docuworld theme, vision. And I think you all agree with me that from a product side, we were never in better shape than we are today. And I think a big portion of the success we have enjoyed in the last couple of years is really also driven by the product. And what our vision is to really build on this leadership position, technology leadership position which we have, that's going to be the focus of our afternoon session with Jürgen and Michael Berger and Tobias Getz and Mirko. They will give you a very thorough roadmap and outlook how we're going to continue building that leadership position. What I want to do already at this point, I just want to go through those 5 pillars of technology leadership which we defined last year. So again, you have it available and you're aware of it when you go out to a customer or to a prospect today. So first of all, we have innovation. If you look at intelligent indexing, if you look at our cloud offering. We have our architecture, if you just look at our multi-tenant capabilities which we have available in our product. We have security, if you just look at this very, very detailed and granular rights system which we have available in Docuworld. We have integration, if you look at our configurators like Smart Connect, which makes it very simple to connect basically to any application. And we have scalability. As you know, we can start with a single server installation, very small, all the way to an enterprise-wide rollout. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, let me just wrap up at this point. The digital transformation we're in and the important role ECM plays represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for all of us here in the room. When we look at our setup, from a product standpoint, with you guys, our partners worldwide in the field, the support we can provide from a training standpoint, from a support standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from a sales standpoint with our regional sales directors, there's no company in the world who has a better setup, a better chance to really make the most out of this opportunity. And therefore, I really would like to ask you to go out with full power, with full energy, and really make the most out of this market opportunity. This is really our time now, and we just have to do it. And with that, I really want to thank you for all the business and all these years, for your loyalty, for your partnership, and I wish you all the best for 2016 and have fun here at Docuworld 2016. Thank you very much.